Well, we got an email request here. A person simply asked, would you please show how to create the effect of light on water? This person gave me an example of what he didn't want to see, but I won't show you that. Let's dig into this one. Well, I guess I just sound like a broken record when I do these tips, but there's a reason for that, and that is because my broken record works. What we do when we want to paint anything is we observe what's happening there, what's happening with color. And when I say happening, visual things happen. We just have to look at it from that point of view, that something visually is happening. Now, what is happening? Well, I have this photo that I ripped off of Pixabay, and I increased the size. I did an enlargement of it here, make it a little bit clearer to see what's happening. Now, we're just going to look at the water because we want to keep this short enough so that you'll have time to practice it. So we'll just look at the water, and if you look at just what's happening, don't call it water and don't call it light shining on water. I hate to say don't. But when you do that, you don't see the water. We usually will see what we label a thing to be. And so if we see it as water, or if we see it as light shining on water, we don't have any clues as to what to do about it. But if we look at it as value and color, and not only that, but visual movement. So we see three things going on here. And so the values that we see going on, let's look down at this and look at this. They're very, very subtle. The values that we see a very slight gradation of value from the distance down to about right here. And then we see a change in value, very subtly. Change in value right there. It gets a little bit lighter, then it gets a little darker, gets a little lighter again, it gets a little darker. That's the pattern of value we see. Well, what do we see in the way of color? Well, if you look way back here, you'll see the color's a little different than here. Now, we would call this, go to our color wheel to identify the hue of that color. And if I go to the color wheel, now we look at this photograph, and the photograph is not a good reproduction of what we would actually see if we were there. So it's better if you observe these things on location than just depending on photographs. But anyway, we look at this. We see that the water back here, it's all in that blue range. But you can see that the water back here tends to be a little bit leaning a little bit. We see just a tiny bit of a green. In other words, perhaps a portion of sky reflecting in. And then as it gets closer to the front, we see less and less of that. What do we see in the way of the saturation of the water here? Well, the saturation is, we've got a very, very low saturation. Here again, we can use the color wheel. You see it's much less, it's much more neutral than the blue on the color wheel. Now we've talked about the value, gradation, saturation, and the color. What else? I say visual movement. Visual movement is simply what we say. It's the way things are moving visually. And so what we look at here, we can see that there is a movement that goes back and forth like this, especially see it right here. Now, if we take all that and put it into action, we will paint the shimmering light on water. So let's take it step by step. What do we see as far as what seems to be on top and what seems to be underneath? We know that the top of the water is reflecting the light. So that light reflection is actually on top. And underneath that, we see the gradation. All right, so this is one way to approach that. I got on my palette here three colors. And this color is, I'm going to call these by the hue names first. This color is blue. This color is blue-green. And this color is red-orange. Now this color is a very desaturated, yet red-orange. The blue-green and the blue are pretty saturated. All of these come out of the tube very dark. Tube name for this color is ultramarine blue. The tube name for this color is Rembrandt Viridian. And the tube name for this color is also Rembrandt Transparent Oxide Red. So I always like to start with my darkest, most transparent colors. If I don't have a dark transparent color, then I will go to the next option that is available. But that's where I always like to start. Now, let's look at the value that we're going to need. So we see that value is very, very dark. Let's get the value scale up here. We see that value is very, very dark. But we see, you can see the value will register on this side, the value that we're looking at right here. Let's go down here. The value is registering right in here on this side, and we see value contrast there. That's where some of the values go this dark right here, and some go a little lighter over here. So let's put that together now. I'm going to put it together in just a quick demonstration, not trying to paint the whole thing, just a quick demonstration of what would happen here. All right, so we see the gradation, the distant color. By the way, I've just got two values here of each of those colors. So I'm going to pull this over. We've got the value here, and we see in the distance, see how desaturated that color is. So what we'll do to begin with is to desaturate that middle value. So I'll use this color. This red orange has red in it, and it will desaturate blue. And there's Charlie coming again. If you're accustomed to seeing our quick tips, you're also probably familiar with Charlie. See how it's getting closer? Much, much closer to what we're seeing right there. I need to keep that. In fact, I'm going to mix more than that. Mix a good little bit of that so that we'll have plenty. I'm going to put some more of that red orange into it. Might have overshot. What happens when we put two complements together? They neutralize each other, meaning they subtract color out of each other. And so when I put that red-orange in there, it subtracted blue out of that blue. Now let's see. Okay, that's sort of what we have there, maybe just a little bit bluer. Okay, now I'm going to come down here. Let's pull up some of that very, very dark. And let's just I'll just go backwards on my scale here. Now, when you're desaturating color, you always use colors of the same value unless you want to create a color that is a darker or lighter value. So that's why I'm desaturating these the way I am. So I want that set first. Now I better add just a little bit more blue to that. So I think that's going to give me the ability to interpret what I see up here. These two along with those. So let's see how it will go. Very, very, very quickly now. I will start out with the middle value of the desaturated version and reach the brush in and pick up just a little bit of the more saturated blue, because that's what I see right back there. And so I'm just going to use this back. Now here's the visual movement. If we put these colors on in the direction, in the kind of visual movement that we see, it makes it a whole lot more easy, or a whole lot easier to get what we're looking at in terms of how those colors are moving. All right, so I said I see a gradation, and that's what I'm going to create now. I'm going to create it. I do want to, I'm going to pull just a little bit more of this color right here so I can just reach for it right there. Okay, now a little bit darker, not much, but just a little bit darker. So I'll just reach the brush in and get those in, and just randomly move back and forth, and let's put that in. See, all right, here we go. I left that. I don't want to leave marks there. So here we go. All right, now I'm going to work faster now. Got a little bit darker. You hear the rain coming in. We almost are getting that what we see in terms of the gradation now. Now I also have a feeling as it's coming forward, as I put it down here, that it might need a little bit of red violet. Looking on the color wheel, we see the red violet in this direction here, and a lot of times we'll see that in water. So I have a red violet. I'm going to use this red violet right here. I have this red violet right there. That is a quinacridone violet. And what I'm going to do here now, I'm going to barely touch it, just barely touch that and work it in. Aha, look at that. So variation in hue, when we're working water or a surface where we see different hues popping in and out, using a variation in hue as we develop the underpainting is always a good idea. Keeping an eye on what's happening there. Okay, we'll need to get this a little bit. Now see what we're happening there in front. As we're getting towards the front, we're getting a little bit more value contrast. And so that's what I'm doing right now. Give just a little bit more value contrast in that front. All right. Okay, now let's dip into the dark and move this dark. I've dipped into the dark with the paints, these colors still on the brush. Move it in, and let's just see the pattern of that. It goes up like that, and then it goes down like this. See that? This pattern right here. So, and it kind of skips as it goes up and down. So we get those variations in this, I call this layer the block-in layer. That's always the layer I use to build a painting first. I always like to get the colors and values that I see underneath. I always like to get those down first. So then it's easy to build things on top. I'm going to do one more little bit of smoothing out of a gradation right up here. Moving back into these two right here, just like this. You get that. There we go. Now you can see by leaving those, having those a little bit more blended back there, letting them get a little less blended, that enables us to see things getting less detail as they move in the distance. We don't see them getting extremely lighter there. But now what we can do put a little bit of white down. I think I'll just put this white right here, right there. Now, we can see a little bit more light back reflecting in this deep distance. It seems to be a little bit cooler. So I'll just barely reach the brush there now. And I'm going to sort of scumble that, meaning I'm going to hold the brush almost parallel to the canvas like that and just lightly touch it. Lightly touch it. There we go, like this. And now I'm going to begin to show the shimmer of that water. We'll start out with value contrast very close and keeping those edges very soft. The edges, the brush edges, the edges of the brush mark. We keep those very soft, but just give them a little bit more blend as they are in the distance there. Now add a little bit more white with that color still in the brush. A little bit more white, and watch it as we're coming forward here. And I'm going to let that white get just a little bit lighter as it comes forward, but I know that there are a lot of people that will mix a white and they'll put a little bit of yellow in it or something, and they'll just use that color all the way through for reflecting. But really that's not what we see, is it? What we're seeing is we're seeing a gradation. We're seeing the light very, very close. Any contrast we see in the distance there is very, very close. You see that? And then as it gets closer, then we can scumble lighter, but not white. We don't see white. And if you see white, of course, but in this case, we don't really see white in here. So now watch this. I'm using this directional movement. I'm just going to let the brush kind of skip around just a little bit. Just skip it using just the tip of the brush. Just let it skip around a little bit. You see a little bit lighter, maybe where the splash is a little bit more active. Now I'm going to go back to this middle value here and begin to mix it into the white. And I'm going to gradually get these strokes a little lighter as I come towards the front. As I need to be sure I keep that direction. movement. It's sort of the directional movement is sort of tilted this way and tilted that way. So it's kind of an alternation. These two movements are kind of alternating together. That's what we see in the movement. So see how easy it can become when you break these things down into what they're doing rather than what they are. Just ask yourself, what's it doing? And go through the visual elements of what is the color doing? What is the value doing? What is the saturation doing? That's three parts of color. And what is the visual movement doing? And the visual movement is the directional movement. And so I'm now kind of skip a little bit. I'm going to make just a little bit lighter. Just kind of scumble a little bit lighter here, here, and here. And you can see now how that begins to imitate, or, I'm going to say the word imitate. It begins to interpret. That'd be a good one. I'm going to use just a little bit of a vertical there because I see a little feeling of vertical right there. But you can see now how that will interpret when we're using that process of seeing. We can see how we can interpret the moving water. In fact, we interpret anything we see. We'll give that just a little bit more emphasis on the dark here in front, so to show you what we can do there just by putting a little fleck of that very, very dark, right here, maybe right here, maybe a little bit right there. And so give that a try. I think you'll find out that if you will train yourself to look at things in terms of what the visual elements are doing rather than what it is, you will be surprised that your painting will just open wide open. Be sure to view all of our quick tips. And while you're doing so, subscribe to the channel, click on the bell so you'll always get a notice when we produce a new quick tip, which is every week. And if you have a question, leave it in the comments section and we'll make a quick tip for you. Also, take a trip over to DianneMize.com where I have full-length lessons, downloads, DVDs, lots of other stuff there, some free stuff for you. And while you're there, you can subscribe to the newsletter, and that way you'll always be informed every time we do something new.